If you still think the government will step in and protect you from AI, wake up. This game is being written by the same people selling AI to the world. They are not just building technology, they are using money, power, and political influence to bend the law in their favor. I am Max, from 5 years in the future. And today, I am going to tell you why AI is not only threatening you in the job market, but also pulling the strings behind the power struggle around it. Why are AI companies pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into politics? Why do laws that sound like they protect the public end up weak, watered down, or gone before they can do anything real? Is the government truly powerless? Or has the whole board already been arranged by big tech long before the public noticed? We are about to break all of that down right now. Welcome to today's story. The hidden war to buy AI law. And now, stay with Survive AI. This video is not here to push some wild conspiracy. It is here to expose a very real mechanism. When an industry gets big enough, rich enough, and fast enough, it does not wait for the law to catch up. It moves first. It applies pressure. It pours in money. It builds networks of influence, then it bends the rules in the direction it wants. And when that happens, the people left unprotected are not just business rivals. They are the public, the workers, and the families who thought someone would step in for them. Let's start with one detail that sounds like a movie, but is very real. A man named Tyler Johnston runs a small AI oversight group. He is not a billionaire, not a senator, not even someone with major power. He is just doing something that, in a normal society, should be seen as reasonable. He is asking questions. More specifically, he and his group raised concerns about the lack of transparency in OpenAI's move toward a for-profit structure. No calls for revolution. No vandalism. No personal smears. Just hard questions aimed at one of the companies sitting in the center of the AI boom. So what happened next? Someone showed up at his front door carrying a legal summons. They did not come to debate. They came to demand emails, messages, documents, and the names of people he had been in contact with. That one detail alone is enough to expose the coldest part of this game. When you are small, and they are huge, even your right to ask questions can start feeling dangerous. A lot of people hear that and think, then there must have been something very serious going on if an AI company reacted that hard. Yes, something serious was happening, but not in the way most people think. The serious thing here is money. If the restructuring gets blocked, giant investments could be affected. If the process gets examined more closely, growth could slow down. If more legal barriers appear, the race could lose speed. And in the world of big tech, losing speed is not a small inconvenience. It can mean losing billions of dollars, losing your advantage, losing the #1 seat on the board. That is why they do not look at people like Tyler as citizens asking hard questions. They look at them as very small obstacles that could stain a very large growth path. And once they start seeing it that way, the response changes. It is no longer about dialogue. It is no longer about transparency. It becomes about clearing the road. And if one small individual can get treated like that, imagine the pressure lawmakers face when they touch the real interests of this industry. That is when the story stops being about one company. It opens into a much bigger model of power. Out front, big tech talks about innovation, the future, and opportunity. But behind the curtain, it builds a whole system to make sure no one can touch its speed too deeply. It hires people who understand politics. It builds lobbying teams. It connects with big pools of money. It shapes public opinion. And most important, it sends a very clear signal to anyone thinking about tighter regulation. If you go after AI, you are going after a wall of cash. That is the dangerous part. Because once an industry becomes rich enough not only to outrun the law, but also to bend the law toward its own interests, the game changes its nature. It stops being simple technology competition. It becomes a fight over who gets to write the boundaries for society itself. And at that stage, ordinary people are no longer standing in front of just a product. They are standing in front of an empire, learning how to protect itself from accountability. Money does not just buy ads. Money buys time. Money buys access. Money buys a seat in the room before the law is even finished. That is why big tech does not wait until regulation arrives before it reacts. It moves first. It meets the right people. It pours money into lobbying. It pushes messages that sound beautiful, like innovation, global competition, protecting America's lead, and securing the future. On the surface, that all sounds reasonable, but underneath that language is a very practical goal. Make any serious barrier strong enough to slow AI growth much harder to pass. And this is the scary part. When a giant tech company steps into politics, it does not always need to win by writing a brand new law from scratch. Many times, it only needs to do something much simpler. Make the law weaker. Make the law slower. Fill the law with holes. That alone is enough to keep moving ahead, while the rest of society still thinks someone is about to hit the brakes. And when the law gets weaker, the first people who pay the price are not always politicians. It is usually much weaker groups: children, parents, workers, people without legal teams, without lobbying money, without backdoors into private negotiations. Look at the logic of this game. If a law tries to tighten AI use around minors, increase platform responsibility, or force companies to be more transparent about risk, every one of those rules can slow growth. And for big tech, slower growth is the worst signal possible. That is when the pressure starts. Not always through some open threat. Sometimes it comes through private meetings. Technical feedback. Warnings that America could lose to China if regulation gets too strict. Lines that sound patriotic, progressive, even reasonable. But the outcome is always familiar. Protection for the public gets softer. Protection for the companies gets thicker. And when the dust settles, people think they have a law. But what they really got is a very pretty door with no lock on it. That is the moment this stops being only about technology. It becomes a fight over who gets to define what safe means, what innovation means, and what level of risk is acceptable for the whole society. In the past, the public often imagined that the danger from AI would come from the product itself: a chatbot giving bad answers, a biased model, a fake video. But the deeper danger sits underneath all of that. Who is deciding the rules around those things? If the people setting the limits are the same people making the most money from pushing those limits farther, then the balance is already broken from the start. That is why the public debate around AI sounds so complicated. But the core is actually very simple. One side wants more speed. The other side wants more brakes. The problem is that the side pushing speed is usually richer, faster, better connected, and better at telling a story people want to believe. And when that goes on long enough, the public does not just lose control. It gets trained to see the loss of control as a normal price of progress. But this is where the story takes its most uncomfortable turn. A lot of people still believe that it is fine to let technology race ahead now and fix the rules later. That sounds reasonable. And that is exactly the trap. Because once the infrastructure is deeply planted inside schools, workplaces, digital platforms, customer service, hiring, and even the emotional lives of children, fixing it later is no longer simple. By then, AI is no longer just a product. It has become an ecosystem: revenue, jobs, political pressure, national competition. And once something sinks that deep into society, every attempt to tighten the rules gets painted as anti-growth, anti-innovation, or dangerous to America's global position. That is the real turning point. The biggest battle does not happen when AI has already caused obvious harm. It happens much earlier, when the public is still being calmed by convenience, and the law is being slowly tilted out of shape. By the time most people realize what happened, the board is usually already leaning. And once the board is tilted, ordinary people are almost always the last ones to react. A family in America does not wake up every morning to read draft AI laws. A worker does not have time to follow every lobbying move in Washington. They just see things slowly changing around them. Their children get surrounded by content that becomes harder and harder to control. Their jobs get squeezed by systems that become harder and harder to challenge. Decisions about hiring, evaluation, firing, recommendations, monitoring, and behavior are increasingly handed to models they do not understand, cannot inspect, and cannot hold accountable when something goes wrong. That is where this story hits real life. It is no longer just a fight between a few corporations and a few lawmakers. It becomes a situation where ordinary people are pushed into having to protect themselves, while still believing the system is protecting them. And if you still think this is only a story for tech people or political insiders, then you may already be standing too close to the fire without feeling the heat yet. The biggest mistake right now is thinking, lobbying and AI law are far away from me, so this probably will not touch my life. No visioned. By the time you feel it in your daily life, it has usually been touching you for a long time already. The real warning signs are not always some giant bill collapsing in public view. The real warning signs are smaller. Safeguards keep getting weaker, slower, softer. One clause gets rewritten, one duty gets loosened, one responsibility gets turned into a recommendation. Then piece by piece, the public gets pushed into carrying more risk inside a system that carries less responsibility. That is the most dangerous turning point. Not when AI becomes too powerful, but when the people who are supposed to apply the brakes start sounding exactly like the people hitting the gas. From that moment on, the game changes completely. The public is no longer watching from the outside. It is being pulled into a massive live experiment where the technology moves fast and accountability moves slow. And the people who pay the price in the end are almost always the weakest ones. So how does an ordinary person survive on a board like this? Step 1. Drop the illusion that someone will automatically protect you. Do not assume the company will act ethically on its own. Do not assume the platform will know where to stop. Do not assume the government will block dangerous things before they reach your family. In this phase, naivety is far too expensive. You need to see AI as a force entering real life. Not only through work, but through your children, your information, your emotions, your buying habits, and even the way you understand right and wrong. What does that mean? It means that starting now, you need to ask questions back. Who is this system serving? Was this decision made by a human or by a model? If something goes wrong, who is responsible? An ordinary family cannot rewrite the law, but it can stop living as if the system is definitely on its side. That shift alone is already a powerful first layer of self-defense. Step 2. Do not just consume technology. Learn to notice when it is shaping you. This point matters a lot, especially for families with children. Because the most dangerous moment is not when AI tells an obvious lie. The most dangerous moment is when it slips in quietly, smoothly, conveniently, then slowly replaces your ability to question what you are seeing. A child starts trusting machine-suggested content. An adult gets used to letting an algorithm choose the news they read, the videos they watch, and even the way they react. A worker gets used to accepting a score from a system without understanding how that score was built. Each one of those things may look small by itself, but together, they create a society increasingly guided by systems that are not transparent. That is why the second survival step is not running away from technology. It is holding on to your ability to doubt, to verify, and to teach the people around you to do the same. A society that loses the reflex to question becomes very easy to steer without noticing it. Step 3. Build small safety zones for yourself. Instead of waiting for one giant safe system to appear. It may sound less dramatic, but it is the most practical move you have. At work, that means knowing what system is evaluating you, what data is being collected, and what decisions could be automated without you even being told. At home, that means setting clear limits around devices, platforms, and the kind of content entering your children's minds every day. In your information life, that means not blindly trusting whatever appears in your feed first. The people who survive best in this phase are not always the ones who know the most AI terms. They are usually the ones who build simple but solid barriers. They know when to trust. They know when to stop. They know what can be made convenient, and what should never be handed fully to a machine. Because the truth is this: when law moves slower, when companies move faster, and when responsibility gets blurred, self-protection at the personal and family level stops being optional. It becomes a survival skill. So if you still believe the AI fight is only a story about a few tech companies and a few politicians in Washington, it may be time to let go of that belief. What is happening is not just a product race. It is a fight over who gets to decide how much risk society should accept, who gets protected from responsibility, and who will carry the consequences in the end. It sounds cold, But the colder it sounds, the more important it is to face it early, because the most exposed people in this phase will not always be the poorest ones. They will be the people who still believe the system will fix itself before it is too late. I am Max. And if you want to survive the next 5 years, do not just ask how powerful AI is becoming. Ask who is being allowed to write the rules around it. If videos like this help you see the hidden side of the game more clearly, stay with the channel. Because in the next episode, we are going straight into a darker question. What happens when children grow up in a world where AI does not just serve them, but quietly shapes the way they think?